Charleston Tech, and there are 3 of us today from Booz Allen Hamilton. There's going to be 2 talks and 3 breakout sessions. And so Booz Allen Hamilton is a firm that's, there's a Charleston hub that we are all from, but Booz Allen Hamilton is huge. It's all over the world. It's been going for 100 years. It's military, government, and business. And my name is Imee Cuison, and I'll be in a breakout session. And we have Jennilyn Howell, and I have my daughter here with me, so you will hear her often. And we have Erin Winstanley as well, and we are all full stack engineers at Booz Allen. And Jennilyn is going to go first. She was formerly a retail and account manager before she pivoted into tech in 2017. And I work with her every day, and she teaches me a lot every day, and I'm so grateful to have her. I don't know what I would do without you. So, I'll let you talk about yourself now.
Oh, Imee, you're so kind. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would do without you either. All right. Thank you. I really appreciate all of you being here this afternoon. I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to share some of my experiences from my previous jobs in the non-technical world and how the lessons learned have enriched my time as a programmer and support me in my day-to-day life. I will go ahead and share. I have a few slides really just to guide our conversation today. If you're just joining, welcome. I'm Jennilyn Howell. So glad to have you here. I see a few faces popping up. Today, we're going to talk about practicing empowerment. And what I'd like to share with you are things that I've pulled from my past in the non-technical world and that helped me in my day-to-day life. I started in tech with a lot of people-facing experience. And as I transitioned from talking to people every day, all day, to talking to computers most of the day, I realized that some skills that I had gained as a retail store manager and as an account manager for a small marketing firm were helping me get deeper into the process of becoming stronger and more confident. And this is the definition of empowerment just from Google, but it resonated with me a lot for this word process, implying that empowerment is something that is fluid. It's something we're engaged in. It's always moving, stretching, and growing. It's something that we're working on. Before I get too much deeper into things, I do want to preface by saying I'm not here to say that I have all of the answers or any of the answers, really. I am only sharing some things that I've learned and that helped me, and they might not be the best fit for you, but I do hope that from my experience and lessons learned, maybe you can pick up a couple of things that can inspire you to find self-empowerment in your day-to-day life. There's 3 main principles that guide my path to self-empowerment, that ignite my participation in that process of becoming stronger and more confident. They are priorities, that's the foundation, and then boundaries and decisions go hand in hand with giving voice to priorities, kind of acting out those things that are important to me. Without priorities, self-empowerment doesn't exist. It is the base. I mentioned the word foundation earlier. Without having an idea of what's important, both at a life level and in the day-to-day, there's nothing to really fuel our choices and fuel the self-empowerment. This became more evident for me the longer I worked in retail. I was always at the mall, especially during holidays. So that was pulling me away from family events and engagements that were happening. I had a long commute, and that was interfering with the amount of time my husband and I had to spend together. And I also, once I got promoted to store manager, I found that I couldn't ever leave the office at the office. I remember being on vacation at the beach, getting frantic phone calls about things that I could not control from 400 or 500 miles away. And that realization that I needed for my personal well-being, the ability to disconnect from my career, as well as these other priorities, led me and my husband as a team to start making changes to carve out the life that we wanted in order to live out these priorities. In the day-to-day, priorities are important as well, critical even. I find that keeping a mental checklist of what I'm needing to do for the sprint, for the week, having an idea of what's coming down the road, what through family obligations perhaps, or other things going on, where I can say, okay, where do I need to flex and push and set expectations around where I'm going to be, where my time is going to be focused based on maybe a deadline or some kind of family thing that I have, or time for myself, time to just unwind and have that quiet time away from things demanding my time and energy. And that really brings us to the next pillar, and that is boundaries. I mentioned setting expectations around what I'm going to be doing. And I think of a boundary as an expectation that's been set. Boundaries are ways we can give voice to our priorities and start to live them out, create space for us to focus on the things that are important at any given time. I admit that I haven't had the best connotation of this word, but found that when I shifted my view a little bit to think of a boundary not as something that was holding me back, but instead as a tool that I can use to push back against the world's demands on my time and focus so that I can continue to move forward with my priorities or the things that I had committed to get done. The most proactive way to do this is establish expectations. I've got some examples on the screen of some expectations that you might set at work, some things that are familiar to me, but they might resonate with you or have similar, you might have set similar expectations in the past. And as you scan those, you may notice that there's a little something missing. My former boss at the small marketing company I worked at was very wise in coaching me to edit the minimizing words I was using when I was communicating with clients. And at first, I didn't even pick up on that I was adding in a lot of sorries and justs in my conversation and other minimizing phrases. But what was happening was I would get off calls and feel almost like I got steamrolled. And what was going on was there was this communication confidence gap. And that's a term I just kind of made up. But my clients were coming in, knowing their business, knowing their role with what they were doing, whether they're a marketing manager or a CEO or even the business owner. And many of them had been doing what they were doing for decades. And while I had the knowledge and confidence in our business processes, in our technology, and in what we could deliver for the clients, I wasn't expressing that in the way I was communicating. When I started to be conscious of these filler words that were minimizing what I had to say, I found that that communication confidence gap narrowed, if not closed. And it created a way for my clients and I to meet at the same level and engage in more nuanced, meaningful communication around our business partnership. This, of course, spilled over as a habit into my regular communication. And I found that by removing these words, it reinforced a belief that what I had to say mattered, what I needed mattered, and the expectations I was setting mattered. Removing minimizing words from my language has been and continues to be one of the most empowering things that I've done and am continuing to work on. Again, remembering that empowerment and the things that we can do to be empowered is a process. So I encourage you to consider that if you haven't. I think we could talk about boundaries all afternoon and all the different ways of setting boundaries and setting expectations and how that can help us live our lives more fully. But I also want to talk about decisions before we move on to the next speaker. Boundaries tend to be proactive ways of protecting our priorities and giving voice to them. Decisions tend to be reactive, whether you're making a big change based on, you're making a big decision based on a priority that has shifted or changed for you, or based on an external influence that's triggering you to make a big decision. And I find that when I'm faced with something big, such as the decision to quit my job and go to a coding boot camp for 3 months in hopes of making it through the boot camp, being decent enough at the skill to be hireable, and then starting this whole new career and finding some level of success in that. That was a huge decision, but I leaned on my priorities. Priorities I had for my career in this moment were needing more challenges, wanting some more flexibility, wanting some more career mobility, the ability to have a lot of choices and growth opportunities, and of course, opportunities for salary growth. And by leaning on that, as well as some other family priorities my husband and I had established together, I found that while, yes, my decision to change careers through this avenue of the coding boot camp was terrifying, it affected everything we did, but that I was confident in the decision and viewed it as a learning opportunity, was willing to accept the outcome as a learning opportunity as opposed to something that defined me in terms of success or failure. Let's think about the day-to-day, maybe the more mundane decisions. In talking with some of my peers and some other women in tech, saying no is one of the hardest things to do. And I think it's hard for many reasons, mainly because there's a lot of what ifs that pop up in your head when you're like, what if I push back on this? What's going to happen? And also because I know I personally have a tendency to want to be really accommodating. And if I say no, somehow I feel like I'm not being supportive. But again, changing the way that we think about saying no from failing in a way to instead looking at it as a tool to continue to block out the way the world is looking to pull your focus away from what you've prioritized at any given time. I've got some examples on the screen. You'll notice none of these have the word no in them. And that, again, we're minimizing the minimizing words. The reasons that you may push back on something are important. From a professional standpoint, granted, I have been privileged to have really good managers and leaders, but it's been my experience when I say no to project manager or someone wanting to add something to my plate, that the response is either, oh yeah, okay, no problem. Or the response turns into a conversation around, how are your expectations of me changing based on this new task that you've given me? And it really helps to fight my tendency to be resentful of, well, can't you see how much I have going on that now everything's at risk, right? So it opens the door again for us to engage with each other and for you to say, these are the priorities I have right now, and I'd like to stay focused unless this genuinely is an urgent need. And then saying yes. If no is the tool with which we continue to carve out space for our priorities, push back against the other things demanding our attention, then saying yes is the tool with which we expand on our priorities and live them out even bigger. From a business perspective, I have found that keeping priorities in mind when saying yes is important, and being sure to be in communication with my leadership around what some of my career priorities are, even if those priorities are vague. Recently, we had a women's panel through one of our women's business groups at work, and something came out of that that really struck me, and it encapsulates this concept as it relates to business very well, and that is opportunity presents itself in the form of work. If you're in a season where you're looking for that promotion, or you're looking to maybe break out of the plateau you feel like you're in, look for the opportunity in the form of work and say yes to those things that excite you and keep you excited about the career that you're in, the career path that you're on. In closing, I would like to leave you with a word of empowerment. This comes from a book that I really like and encourage you to check out from the library or maybe on audiobook. It's a book called Broadband, and it's a historical look at all of the women who have made the internet, all of the women that have made this industry that we're in. And Claire Evans, author, finishes her book partially by saying, there's no right kind of engineer. There's no special plane of thought that must be reached to make a worthwhile contribution. There's no right education, no right career path. Sometimes there isn't even a plan. The internet is made of people, and it does what we tell it to do. We can remake the world. This resonates with me so much because it reminds me that empowerment comes from within. I believe you are remaking the world every day at your keyboard, in your video calls, in your homes, and for those of you that are parents, in the lives of your kids every day. Be empowered as you continue your journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennilyn. That was awesome. And you gave us practical things that we can use every day for empowerment. Thank you so much. So next we're going to talk to Erin Winstanley, and then just remember everyone, after Erin's talk, then we'll do breakout sessions, and then you can ask Jennilyn any questions and Erin any questions after this. Okay, so Erin is also a full-stack engineer with us at Booz Allen. She was a stay-at-home for 7 before entering the tech industry. So she went to the Flatiron School online, and she transitioned from wrangling children to wrangling code. And yeah, she has 3 kids and was able to do this. So love to hear, Erin.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to share a little bit of my story with y'all about how I went from being a stay-at-home mom to 3 children to a single working mother. It's been a long journey. The first time I ever thought about becoming a developer was actually 8 years ago. I read this when my daughter was about 6 months old. I read this article about the need for women in development roles, and it really presented development to me in a way that I had never seen it before. And it talked about how development has a large amount of creativity in it, and that it's really about logic. And those were things that had never been presented to me before. And it really appealed to me. Now I'm just coming up, now this happened 8 years ago, and I'm just now coming up on my 1-year anniversary working at Booz Allen Hamilton, which is my first job as a developer. So obviously it's been a long road. I tried and failed to get on the path to development about a half a dozen times. And each time I just felt like I couldn't do it, that it was never going to happen. And it came to the point that I had a realization that things were I was just surviving. I was, as a stay-at-home mom, me and my kids, we were just surviving, and that something had to change in order for us to thrive. So I made the transition from being a stay-at-home mom and started being a single working mother. I wasn't able to jump into trying to work my development track immediately. In the beginning, I wasn't able to thrive right away. It was still working on my path, surviving to get to that point of thriving. But about 6 months in, I was finally able to get things worked out to get into a boot camp, and I joined Flatiron School. It was a 5-month program, working 50 hours a week. At the time, I was in a really unstable living situation. I was living out of a suitcase. Life was chaos. I didn't have any local family support. I don't have any family in the area. And it meant having to ask my kids to make sacrifices for our family, which is something as a parent that you're more than willing to make any amount of sacrifices for your children, but to have to ask them to make sacrifices for you is a really hard decision. When I joined my boot camp, I was really lucky that my co-op leader was also a single mother. And so she really understood where I was. She understood how hard it was working, 10 hours a day, not being able, going from seeing my kids 24 hours a day nonstop to working 10 hours a day, trying to get this work done. And I was so often overwhelmed. Like, I wasn't sitting there powering through everything. I got overwhelmed every single day. And most days I couldn't think about the next day. Some days I couldn't even think about the next hour. And occasionally I was just like, I'm just going to get through the next 5 minutes. I'm going to do this little coding project right now, 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes is up. All right, let's get to the next 5 minutes. And I had to remind myself that I was doing it for my kids. There's so many things that, as a parent, I'm not sure I could have done it for myself, but I knew I could do it for my kids. And so I was always just thinking, all right, what's the next thing? I don't need to think about tomorrow. I just need to think about what's next. All right, I'll do the next thing. All right, after that's done, what's the next thing? I had a power playlist that I would play on those days when I just thought everything was going to fall apart. And it would really empower me. I really think music is a great way. It can really help meet you, help push you, help empower you. And I finally made it through the 5 months. And Booz Allen Hamilton was actually my first choice there, who I wanted to work for. They're also the first company I interviewed at. And I actually initially was rejected. But actually within the same week I got rejected and then got called back. And so I've been really lucky to be able to work at an employer that values its employees, their families, and a work-life balance. But obviously COVID threw everyone's work-life balance out of whack. Suddenly I was working from home 40 hours a week with 3 kids and no help. And as a single parent, your weaknesses are very blatant. There's no one there to help complement your weaknesses, to kind of pick up the slack when you are struggling with something. And something I've found that was really important was the gap. There's a gap between the parent you want to be and the parent you're capable of being. The ideal and reality. And I really had to be very introspective of myself. And the gap is a good thing in some ways. It's good to have an ideal, as long as we don't hold ourselves to an ideal that's greater than what we're capable of. And so there's kind of 2 extremes of parenting that you see, where there's kind of a perfection. I have to be absolutely perfect. My kids have to be absolutely perfect. And then there's the other extreme, which is kind of like, well, I'm just an awful mom, whatever. And so it's obviously finding that middle ground that's most important, that balance. And choosing to judge yourself on the parent that you're capable of being without losing sight of that ideal parent that you want to be. okay, today I was not the ideal parent that I wanted to be, but I really was the best parent that I was able to be. And with our children, we have to do the same thing. There's the behaviors that we want, and then there's the behaviors that our children are capable of. And as when working in the tech industry, I'm sure a lot of us have very intelligent children. And something important to remember is that their intellectual age is not always the same as their emotional age. A lot of times kids are very, very smart, but their emotions are their normal age, and that's perfectly normal. And we have to adjust our expectations a little bit into what they're capable of. And what we as parents and what our children are capable of on a day-to-day changes. COVID has had a huge impact on our capability as parents and our children's capability for good behavior. And things that affect our capabilities on top of that are things like our sleep, our food, work stress, illnesses. These all affect our capability as a parent, and it's okay for that capability to change. You know, I'm capable of being a better parent today because I got a good night's sleep. You know, I'm really not going to be the best parent today because I have this work stress that is weighing on me. Definitely make sleep a priority for yourself and for your children. Science just has proven that our brains cannot function properly without sleep. Our brains can't handle our emotions correctly without sleep. They've actually done some studies into impairment when it comes to sleeping and driving. And so a person who's been awake for 18 hours and then drives has the equivalent impairment to someone who has a blood alcohol level of 0.05. And a person who's been awake for 24 hours has the blood alcohol level of 0.1, which is above the legal limit for drunk driving, if you aren't aware of that. So it stands to reason that if you're impaired in driving, you're going to be impaired in parenting as well. But the most important thing about during COVID is to know your limits. Know when things are too much. Know your children's limits. Know when they're not going to be able to do that behavior for you, that good behavior for you, or they're just not going to be able to finish that school report right this minute. And along with knowing the limits is knowing when to walk away. So much of parenting is knowing when not to do something. And always praise your children. I found that for me, if I am not absolutely sick of praising my children, then I know that I'm not praising them enough. So being sick of praising them is a good sign. And last, don't forget to have fun and connect with your children. Connection before compliance. If my kids and I are having a really rough day and we're fighting and I know that nothing is going to happen, then we have mandatory family dance parties. And it's amazing how much their behaviors can change after having that fun, having that movement, and having that connection with all of us together. So just don't forget to have fun. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Erin, for your thoughts and insight about parenting, especially now since we're all at home working with kids. So thank you so much. That was awesome. So the next part of this is going to be the breakout sessions. So Jennilyn is going to talk about empowerment, and Erin is going to talk about working and parenting in COVID, and I'm going to talk about time management while working from home and homeschooling. So I have the links to the different breakout rooms. So Jennilyn is going to stay on this WebEx, and this is Erin's link. Actually, won't let me copy. Okay, here you go. Paste it in the, oh, it's already there. Okay, great. Thanks, Bill. Okay, thanks so much.
Once again, if you're looking to stay in the breakout room with me, Jennilyn, we'll be staying on this WebEx. I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to matriculate to Erin's and Imee's breakout sessions as well. We'll wait a couple of minutes before we get some conversation going. Neil or Bill, there's a question in the chat regarding whether the breakout sessions happening, the other breakout sessions are being recorded. Is everything being recorded?
Yeah, all three, and you know, the main recorded, and then we'll distribute those after the event.
Perfect. To answer your question, Lisa, if you'd like to participate in a different breakout, you'll need to click the meeting link and drop from this WebEx to join the other.
Could you repeat the topics for each one again?
Sure. We'll have a discussion around empowerment and what that means to you here. Over on Erin's WebEx, they're talking about parenting during the time of COVID. And on Imee's, she's talking about time management, also related to parenting.
Awesome.
Sure. All right, we can go ahead and get started. I wrote down a few questions to get us going, but would rather hear from you. Those are all only in my back pocket if conversation peters out. Does anyone have thoughts or ideas or questions that they'd like to share? Reminder that you'll have to unmute yourself from the WebEx in order to speak.
Okay, I can start with a question, Jennilyn.
Sure, go ahead, Nikki.
So I definitely loved everything that you said about like the way that you can use vocabulary to kind of talk to your manager or job leader about kind of setting your boundaries. I was wondering, like, from your perspective, how do you manage dealing with feeling like your peers or something, like your coworkers, your immediate peers are kind of relying on you to do something as well? Do you have like separate advice for that, or?
I don't know. I think I know what you're saying, though, like someone is waiting on you or they need what you're working on in order to move forward with what they're working on. And I think it still boils down to setting expectations around, hey, this is where I'm at on this task or this assignment or this story, and I'm falling behind because of this. And then really leaning on your Scrum Master to fill in that gap. And I've started to see on tech Twitter, which can be an awful place, that people don't like stand-up, but that's the place, that's what stand-up is for. And also having good relationships with your team. I think that there's empowerment that can be applied to teams as well, and having good communication contracts and processes in place that encourage good interpersonal relationships as it relates to having work that's intertwined. Again, what we do is so communication heavy. Like I talk to a computer all day now, but when I'm in the office, half my day could be talking with colleagues and connecting on what we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Sure. I don't know if that fully answered the question, but I think that's how I tend to handle it. Yeah.
Jennilyn?
Yes. Hi.
Hi, it's Lisa. I don't know if you can see me or not, so I'm just doing the video or the audio. But I am a solar system ambassador, so my hands, I wear a lot of hats. And with NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, there's 10 NASA locations, and I've become involved with all of them. And in knowing all this information and disseminating this information, the time management, the growth has just become so much with the Artemis program, the data locations of, with the new NASA USGS lunar surface data points that NASA, NOAA, their partnership, all these commercial entities and parties have become, all of a sudden it's like with COVID, you see the silver lining and remote services, which is awesome. But with that comes the time management, that I'm in a position that I'm like, my time management, just like you said, no, and how to politely retract from certain things. With COVID and the remote learning and all the small businesses that I'm trying to support and help, it has been overwhelming. Just before this conference, I have another conference going on at the same time globally with Girls in Tech, and Poppy Northcutt was the speaker. I know, the first female engineer for the NASA Apollo program. So she shared some thoughts and empowering women in advocacy, which was wonderful. But, do you have any thoughts? I mean, there are individuals asking me tech questions, how to, asking me to basically go and do their tech support for them. And I'm like, I can't do that. I ethically cannot do that. And I do want to be supportive, but what are your suggestions?
Well, first of all, I admire you for being able to find some kind of balance in all that. That is a lot, and I admire how you're handling it. I think, well, I can only share from my experience, which is happening on a much smaller scale from what you shared. But I find that when there's a lot of demands on my attention, whether from colleagues needing help or Scrum Master coming to me about something, or any multitude of things, work-related or not, that I really have to remember that I can do one thing at a time well, or I can do a lot of things at the same time and kind of struggle to feel like I have a good footing with any of them. And so I find that when there's a lot of stuff being thrown at me, I will set a time box on when I'm able to return to it. So you made the example of a business partner having a question or someone kind of wanting you to do their job. Well, one way I handle that in my role is by saying, I need you to look around, work with it some more, and if you're still stuck on it, ping me in an hour. Or we can look at it together tomorrow if you're still stuck on it. So sort of setting an expectation and saying no at the same time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate this because
Sure.
I have a conference call with them tomorrow, and I'm like, it's something I just don't want to ethically be involved with, and that's, the right way to politely step back. Thank you for saying this.
Absolutely. Or this falls outside the realm of things I'm able to do for you, and here's a possible resource of someone that can help you.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for being here, and thanks for your question.
Yes.
What other thoughts are out there?
I have one more thought, Jennilyn.
Sure.
If no one's going to speak up, with all this that's happening, with people being remotely, I've found myself in this global spectrum of not just only aviation, aeronautics, aerospace, astronomy, etc., geospatial satellites. It's a big, big deal. So one of the events I have, which is September 26th, going on for a full year, Women in Aviation International.
Oh, cool.
Yes, yes. And then in October, I have found myself stretching with partners from like Nebraska, Colorado, Pennsylvania, now Seattle, because the Space App Challenge is coming up. And I know Booz Allen Hamilton participated in one of the other space apps. We have another one coming up that's in October. So being that it's too difficult to grab straws for our state of South Carolina right now, I am now involved with Seattle for this Space App Challenge to provide services. So, I'm throwing that out there because it's, again, these are global events that are occurring. Everyone's in the same type of setting. So we're trying to help students, those who are in transitionary mode with their, maybe you're furloughed. There are other opportunities, other spectrums. That's one thought out there.
Very nice. That is cool to be opening, or to have an avenue, a vehicle to help not only that community of women, but also to offer something to folks that have been furloughed. Very cool work. I have a question for anyone that is open to sharing. What does empowerment mean to you, and or what are some experiences that you've had that have left you feeling really empowered? Go for it, Nikki.
Well, I honestly think that before today, you kind of taught me this. And something that you said to me that really changed what empowerment meant to me is knowing your own worth. And so to me, that's kind of been my definition of empowerment is knowing your own worth. And I do like that you can kind of show other people your worth by picking which opportunities you decide to pursue and which things that you feel empowered to say no to because you know your worth well enough that you are able to say no to those things. So that when you told me that before, that kind of changed my view of empowerment, and I've really liked viewing it like that.
You're so kind. Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, before I really picked up on how this language change, vocabulary change was affecting me, I think I had a very low opinion of myself, and I was just trying to be small and not do anything to rock the boat or shift any waters, try to stay out of everybody's way, but also always be there helping. And it's not sustainable, and it's a very hard thing to carry around as well. I appreciate that reminder. Something that I've done that has helped me feel really empowered is before COVID, Shannon and I had the opportunity to go learn archery at the Johns Island County Park, and that was, to this day, one of the most empowering things I've done. So when this is all over and the county picks that back up, I think that we should just flood that place with technical women ready to go shoot some arrows, hit some targets, and kill some fake turkeys.
I love that idea, Jennilyn. That is awesome. That's like Gina Davis doing archery. That's so amazing. And you know what's one other cool thing, the empowering thing, is that realizing the opportunities. Like my husband and I broke my foot in like 3 different places. It was a really bad break, and the whole leg. Yeah. But I never got to have physical therapy. But we realized, wait a minute, we can go to Folly Beach and get there early and go into the ocean to do physical therapy. So the wonderful thing is that you don't have to pay to go to the beach. We don't have to pay parking because I have a handicap placard. And so now it's like, why wouldn't you go? And just that 1 hour going, like, it's ocean therapy. And each time you go, you come out feeling so much stronger and better, and it's wonderful. And I have to ask you, Jennilyn, I see this picture right behind you, behind your pelican. That picture, that looks just like a photograph my husband took. He takes sunrise photographs, and what he does is he takes them and he does masterpieces on wood of them. So that's something he's doing during COVID. But I just am admiring it, and I thought, I know that photograph.
Oh, thank you. I definitely agree that staying active and finding those physical outlets to feel strong and to move are definitely some of the most empowering things we can do for ourselves right now. And thank you for your compliment. I took that at where I used to live. One morning, winter morning, the sunrises get really colorful in the winter.
They do, and this is perfect timing for night sky photography also, with all the constellations and the alignment of the planets. So good luck. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. What are some other thoughts or questions that y'all have around empowerment?
Hi, this is Shannon. When you were talking about, what made you feel empowered, I thought about when I first started out as a developer, and now I don't need it so much, but the positive feedback was really empowering. And I kind of don't really think about it as much now, but then as I'm, progressing in my career, I think about how important it is for, people who are just starting, like to give that back. And even if it's really basic positive feedback, I think about where I was back then, and it can really go a long way.
That is so true. And I think developers at all levels need that.
I can share a story. This is Katie. I work
Hi, Katie.
Hi. I work over at Booz Allen. I actually on the same team as Erin, one of the other speakers. But anyways, yeah, so I was working in the tech industry for about 10 years, and I got to a point where I was kind of getting burnt out and just not really enjoying things anymore. And so I ended up taking a break and actually went to dog grooming school and kind of took a step back. And I realized that, and since then I've come back, I've joined back in the tech world and as a requirements analyst. But it really made me feel good that I don't have to stick with something. Like if it's really in a bad situation, there's always something out there, even though it's really tough to make that transition. It's just, yeah, there's a lot of challenges, right? But it really helped remind me that, I'm in charge of my destiny. So yeah, that was super empowering.
Sorry, I couldn't get unmuted on my phone. Yeah, that is great. I love your last reflection there, that like we have the power to change things and to choose a different path. And kind of touching back on what Nikki was saying. Wow, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, how like I had like such a small view of myself, and I was trying to stay out of the way. Well, that was also leading to me just kind of like floating along and realizing that without making intentional choices, being intentional about seeking new skills and carving out a new path, that I was going to end up somewhere not fulfilling. So that's awesome. Your dog groomer, that's so cool.
I love that, dog grooming, learning something new. And you know what? You never know. Hey, you pick up all sorts of clientele. Look at all the dogs that are being advocated for COVID. There have been so many adoptions. It's huge.
Right. Yeah. It was such a really great perspective too, just to meet people in a different industry. And yeah, now I have a lot more, appreciation for, this type of work, and I still do it on the side. But yeah, it was, I definitely have a really thankful perspective, which is different than what I had when I was in my past tech role.
So this is Susie from Fish Labs. When I think about empowerment, first I think about self-empowerment and what that means to me, but then I also think about how I help empower others around me, because I think they're both so equally important. And obviously with self-empowerment, you have to feel comfortable with being vulnerable and realizing that if you really stretch yourself, ultimately it's going to be a great thing in the long run, but you may make some mistakes along the way or hiccups along the way, and feeling comfortable with that and just taking more of a growth mindset and learning along the way. And I think as you continue to do that, you build up stronger confidence, and it gets a lot easier then to continue to take that leap. And then I think it's so important, especially for females that don't have very influential or very supportive folks within our life to help us take those leaps, it's so important that we're always paying it forward. So how do I help influence others within my career or within my scope of responsibility or even outside of that, and bring them along with me and build up their confidence along the way too? Because I feel like for every successful woman, like there's probably 10 others, you know, behind her or on the side of her that she can also be help and supportive. So I think it's really important that we're always not just looking at our own bubble, but how do we help influence others around us as well?
1000%. You beat me to this. Is going to be my next question. And it's like next level empowerment. Like, because when you feel strong and confident, you're engaged in that process, then you can't help but look for ways to spread it around. Look for that teammate that's really shy, but you know she has a good idea, but come on, you can say it. Look for ways that maybe somebody's not being treated fairly and stand up. Protect your priorities in that way. And priority being giving voice to those who aren't as confident or other minority voices on your team. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful reflection, Susie. Thank you. All right. I think we can maybe think about wrapping up. Does anyone have any final ideas, thoughts, questions, experiences you want to share?
Hey, Jennilyn, I actually have a question for you.
Sure.
Hey, so I was going to say that empowerment for me means having the confidence to like drive and deliver technical solutions, but you know, I can acknowledge my growth and I can celebrate my wins, but of course there are times when, you know, there's a bug filed on your story or you overlook a simple solution and that 3 points is really 5 points. And do you have any tips on like just forgive yourself for those sort of things and like remembering how far you've come?
Yes. Remember Erin was talking about the parent that you really want to be and the parent that you're capable of? I think that applies to any hat that you're wearing, especially in development. What we're reaching for is continued growth. Like you want to get to that next step, but sometimes maybe you don't have the experience to even see that simpler solution. And so that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is remember that your self-worth doesn't come from the code that you deliver. It comes from inside. And what you have to give to the world is so much greater than Java or JavaScript. So find that meaning within and live that out. Think of the work that you're doing as learning opportunities and not a means of defining who you are in terms of success or failure. There was something else I had, but I think I lost it. Sorry, if it comes to me, I'll flag it to you.
Thanks.
Oh, I remember. So imposter syndrome is a horrible affliction, right? And while I think that there's no way that we'll ever get over that, I have found one silly thing that helps me, and that is just naming it when I feel it. I wish Imee was on this call because I've told her before, like, girl, those imposter syndrome gremlins are telling me some stories right now. And when you name it and you picture it as something that, when you name it, it almost gives you control over it. So be mindful of when those feelings and your imposter syndrome gremlins are telling you lies, so you can tell them to shut up.
Thanks.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. My husband has to tell me to turn my brain off at night sometimes because it's 24/7. He's just like, you got to just turn your brain off. It's just too overload. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, and I feel like kind of that, turning your brain off. I have to keep reminding myself too that kind of time away really kind of amplifies the time back at work. But it's really difficult to do when you're in the moment or when you get too wrapped in. So I guess that's another way I've tried to empower myself. It's just to make it a priority to do mindfulness or something. Because when you get wrapped in those gremlins, they're mean.
Take your PTO.
I agree with you, Katie, because the other night I stayed up until 4 a.m. working on solutions. I can't believe it. And my husband said, oh, you can work all night and until the morning and then sleep the rest of the day. And I was like, oh my gosh, those imposters, it's just, it gets you.
Yep.
All right. Any other final thoughts or reflections?
You're awesome. That's a reflection. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Nikki. Everybody needs a Nikki in their life, y'all. She really is like the cheerleader of our team. For those of you at Booz Allen, you should Slack her and ask her for bird facts.
What is it?
Oh, Nikki and I like to share bird facts to keep us
bird
from
facts.
being
Okay.
too weighed down by our project.
Awesome. I will remember that.
Bird facts?
Birds,
Is that bird?
yes.
Oh my gosh. And see, now my head's spinning because we have a NASA developed program that's about Earth exploration, about all the birds and the nesting and the turtles. And it's crazy because all these satellites with the lasers that follow the krill migration, that follows the shrimp, that follows the mammals, the whales. It's crazy. It's crazy. So now I hope you can understand how I stay up at night, thinking about all these things. It's mind blowing.
Wow. That you can keep up with all that, Lisa. That is so admirable.
I really appreciate this because before all these things and before COVID, I had like 3 people at the Charleston Defense Contractors Association summits, and then also I can't remember her name right now, but from Booz Allen Hamilton, we had a Women in Defense event, and people say you have like an encyclopedia mind, and I asked my husband, I don't know how to take that. I mean, is that a compliment or is that just too much information? I'm like, but they're always like, you're on the go-to girl whenever they need something. So I'm like, okay, I don't know how to take it.
Definitely a compliment from me.
It sounds like a compliment. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. Because you know what? It's crazy at this moment. Rob Fowler sending, David Dixon and other people that are meteorologists to reach out to me for certain stories. I'm like, okay, I'll get it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I have a question for everyone, Jennilyn and everyone that's here. Is everyone keeping up with the W1 telescope that's coming out with by Northrop Grumman? It's a really, they're calling it the Roman telescope after Nancy Roman, who was very big in developing some things for women and astronomy, but it is to be massively incredible with all the images, more so than the James Webb Space Telescope. But it's also going to be used for Department of Defense. So it's happening. It's crazy that it's all happening.
Can you give us a brief overview?
That sounds cool.
Is there a link?
Yeah, or do you have a link?
Oh gosh, yeah, I can give
Cool.
you guys links. I can definitely. I'm gonna put my email. Should I put my email in here, because all this information I'm putting out on social media, because it's just so much. I didn't want to take up the Slack channel for CWIT. I mean, it's crazy. So like all these programs that are available with the data sets and stuff, I'm finding out different organizations that have these grants for 3 years, and they're looking for people. And the W1 telescope is supposed to be massive. And I do know one of the individuals that's working on it. But you know, these are things that for universities, entrepreneurs, individuals, they want everybody involved. And you know, I'll put my email in the link, and if you want to know more, I can certainly add you in. Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
All right, y'all. Well, unless there's any other ideas or questions, I think we can call it an evening. I'm so grateful that you're here. And as I said earlier, I want you all to be empowered as you continue to carve out your journey and carve out the life that you want to live and the type of career that you want to have, and even the kind of day you want to have. I appreciate you so much. Y'all feel free to reach out to me. I don't know if I'm on the Women in Tech Slack. Shannon sent me an invite one time, and I dropped the ball.
Do you know if this is being recorded, or the your original session was recorded?
Yes.
Okay, I figured
they started
it was.
recording before we got started.
I'll go look for that. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Appreciate
See you later.
it.
Bye. Thank you so much, Jennilyn. I love your photo.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye, Lisa. Thanks for your good thoughts.
Thank you.
Neil, do you need anything else from me?
Nope. Got the host role, so I'm going to stop the recording, and then I will and follow.
Awesome. Thanks for